Hello, that intro was amazing. Can I just
That
say
was
that?
so cool.
Before we even start, I was so in it and I was like, wait, okay, we have to start speaking. So, welcome everyone. My name's Karma Brown. I'm an author of a number of novels, including Recipe for a Perfect Wife, which was a Barnes and Noble Discovery pick back in January of 2020. And I have the distinct honor of chatting with Kristen Perrin today about her new book, How to Solve Your Own Murder, which is Barnes and Noble's April monthly pick, which is so exciting. And so thank you, Barnes and Noble, for allowing us to have this conversation and for bringing everyone to this conversation. And before we jump in, Kristen, I'm just going to read your bio so everyone knows a little more about you. Kristen Perrin is originally from Seattle, Washington, where she spent several years working as a bookseller before immigrating to the UK to do a master's and PhD. Her debut murder mystery, How to Solve Your Own Murder, was released in March 2024 and has been translated into more than 20 languages. The book was also a Good Morning America buzz pick, was featured on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and has been an IndieBound, USA Today, and Der Spiegel bestseller. She lives with her family in Surrey, England, where she is hard at work on more books in the series. So, welcome, Kristen, to our chat about your amazing book.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. And I think you are planning to read just a little bit.
Yeah,
Is that true?
yeah,
Okay.
I thought that might set the tone for us a little bit. Shall I?
Yeah, let's
So
do it.
here we are. I've got my little tab ready to go. I will, yeah, I will read a small snippet from this is Francis's point of view. So Francis, just very quickly, the novel starts with Frances, who is 17 in 1965, and she is given a fortune by a fortune teller at a country fair that one day she's going to be murdered. And she basically lives her entire life by this fortune and until eventually when she's in her 60s she is murdered, but she was so kind of convinced of this eventuality that she tried to stop it by digging up dirt on her entire town. So she during the decades that she was living in this vast estate and kind of the ups and downs of her life, she was compiling secrets and looking into anything around her that could potentially be connected to her demise. And when she does die, she states in her will that whoever solves her murder inherits her millions. So we have Annie in the modern timeline, trying to compete against some grasping friends and relatives for to solve this crime. And Annie is kind of also getting to know Frances through her diaries left behind. So we have 17-year-old Frances on the page in the form of her diaries. So this is going to be a quick snippet from chapter 2, which is Frances's first diary entry. I'm writing this all here because I just know there will be things I've seen that might matter further down the road. Some details that will seem small now will turn out to be extremely important, or the other way around. So I'm keeping everything together and I'm making careful notes. Rose still thinks I'm bonkers for fixating on this fortune, but she doesn't know the reason I believe in it so fiercely. Because someone's been threatening me, even before we saw the fortune teller. I found a piece of paper in my skirt pocket that read, I'll put your bones in a box. That threat gives me shivers when I think about it, but I have to keep it close in case there's something I can learn from it, some clue that might help me stop whatever ill fate is already in motion. And then there was my fortune. Your future contains dry bones. Two mentions of bones. It can't be a coincidence. And then Emily vanishing a few weeks ago, almost exactly a year after that fortune was told. When the police interviewed me, I could tell they didn't fully believe what I said. They even asked me if I was feeling like I needed some attention now that all the focus is on finding Emily. So I didn't bother to tell them the rest. I decided then and there to take matters into my own hands. Because the last people I want knowing about this past year are the police. Yeah.
Amazing. I love this book. And I had a chance, I was lucky to read it early. And, I was a big Clue board game fan growing up. I played it obsessively with my family and played it with my daughter when she was young. And this had so many of the same vibes for me, that sort of like charming setting, the quirky characters, this like race to solve a murder mystery. So, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how this idea actually came to be. Like, how did you grab this out of the air and create this amazing book from this idea?
Yeah, well, it was almost, I think really it was sort of coming home to a genre that I have always loved. So the first books I ever fell in love with as a kid were mystery stories. So, books, I was a big Nancy Drew reader. I loved books like The Westing Game and The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. There's so many great children's books that start with that. The Boxcar Children, I absolutely loved those.
Yeah.
Um, and I was kind of going through some ups and downs in my writing journey and, had kind of struck out with a few manuscripts and then was getting, a little bit of traction with others, but I wasn't really landing on anything that felt, like it was going to be the one. And then the pandemic hit. And, I was like a lot of people, I was at home, locked down, and I was homeschooling two young children, and I needed something for me. And I think when I realized I felt like I didn't have anything to lose because we were all going nowhere, doing nothing. And I
Yeah.
wrote, I started, I just thought, I'm going to write whatever I want. And, I didn't, I was like, I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to entertain myself and give myself the lift that I feel like I need right now just to get through this pandemic. And murder mystery was just immediately my instinct kicked in and was like, that's what I want. I want to write something with that kind of golden era Agatha Christie meets, all of these murder mysteries that and Clue and the Nancy Drew vibes. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that I landed on a 1960s timeline with three friends, even though it's English.
Yeah.
And so I had that framework of like, this is the vibe I want. This is the feeling I want. But to get the actual idea down, I kind of started thinking about, and it was kind of dark. I had this conversation with my husband, and it's really where the very start of the idea came
Mm.
from, which is we're all watching the news. It's very doom and gloom. There was a lot of bad things going on, and we realized we hadn't had that serious discussion of like, look, we should write a will. What do you want to happen?
Right.
Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated if anything does happen? And I remember saying to him, okay, well, yeah, no, I would probably want to be cremated. And then I was like, no, 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 no. Because what if I die under suspicious circumstances? Like they would need to like exhume my body for evidence. And he was like, what? I had this whole thing where I was like, yeah, and like even if it seems like it's not suspicious circumstances, like maybe if I'm buried, at least like if you find out down the line that oh, all this time it was suspicious, then you can exhume my body for some forensic. And he just kind of watched me kind of going on about this and was like, are you planning to get murdered? Like, what is this? And
He
I
must
was
know you have this. I mean, you are a fiction writer. This is
like,
what we do. We
no,
create these scenarios and we
no.
work them through. And so,
I just,
this is,
yeah. My writer brain was just kind of like, well, what if this? And so he was like, are you planning to get murdered? And I was like, no, no, no. But like, what if somebody was? And then that was the what if. So I think that like all
mm,
ideas essentially come from this spark, and then you start asking the what if. So it's like,
yeah,
what if someone was planning to get murdered? And then you ask more questions like, what kind of person would, what would you do? And it's sort of like, how could you find that out and be sure of it, if it wasn't like, and that's where the fortune teller idea came from. So it was kind of like a step up
right.
staircase, each sort of way, all against this backdrop of this is the feeling I want. I want that feeling of being transported to like an idyllic country setting, but there's layers of secrets and there's twists and turns, but you know that you're in safe hands and everything is gonna land in, people are
Yeah.
gonna get found out and there's gonna be answers, but there's a puzzle all along the way.
Yeah. And so it sounds a little bit like for you, it was really, because it was such a unique time with the pandemic. And I think a lot of us, stuck with our families and at home and, safe really at home, but then needing to just stretch that creative muscle and fill that space and
Mhm.
finding something that was nostalgic for you because of the Nancy Drew mysteries and then combining that into this very interesting conversation you have with your husband, which is important. And I'm glad that you two sorted out a lot of those
I know.
details,
Yeah. I was
and
like,
came up with a great book idea. I mean, it's
yeah.
really win-win.
Yes, it
But
really was.
you wrote this story that it's dual timeline and dual narrative, really, because we're learning about the past and Francis's story through these journal entries.
Mhm.
And then we're with Annie in the present. And how did you decide? Was that always the intention to have it be a dual narrative situation? And if not, how did that happen
Mhm.
for you? And was it, why was it
Yeah.
complicated? Because I'm sure it was.
It was complicated.
Yeah.
It was complicated in the sense that I had to write this book several times. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, it started out as a YA because I was a children's writer and I just didn't really believe
Oh,
that I could write for adults. I was a children's bookseller, so I was a Barnes and Noble bookseller, and I worked for a number of years in the Barnes and Noble in Issaquah, Washington. So I am, my bio
okay.
says Seattle, but I am from outside of Seattle. I'm from the town of Issaquah, Washington. And I think that Barnes and Noble closed and is now reopening. So I was like, yay!
Oh,
I
great.
was the children's department lead in that store for a short span of time.
Mm,
But children's books were my life. So I was like, this is going to be a YA book because that's about as grown up as I feel like I can write. And
okay.
I sent 20,000 words to my agent and the pitch, and she was like, okay. And Annie was a sassy New Yorker who like lived in a crumbling Manhattan brownstone and was gonna have to fly to England to meet this, kind of like it was gonna be this whole fish out of water scenario where she was gonna
Right.
investigate this murder. There was no Francis on the page POV at all, no dual timeline, no nothing.
Interesting.
So Annie was going to arrive in England and basically see all of these people that knew Aunt Frances and investigate her murder that way. And my agent very rightfully, very kindly was like, okay, the concept is great, but teens do not want to read books where there aren't very many other teens. Like there's one teen. And
Right.
everybody else is elderly in this scenario or mostly. And I was like, that's a good point. And she was like, maybe adult. You can write an adult. You can write it for adults. And I was like, okay, I'll try. And so I hashed out a very I did my pandemic 95,000 word draft, my first draft of this book, and there was still no Frances on the page, but my agent
Wow.
make her English, set the whole thing here because I also had this lack of confidence in my ability as an American to write from the mindset of an English person, from a first person. It was just I guess you have to be, I mean, you're a writer, you have to be brave, this sort of sense of like you kind of have to throw yourself in the deep end, and I wasn't letting myself do that. And so
Yeah.
my agent looked at that 95,000 words and was like, okay, I have a lot of notes. And
Mm.
there were several things missing in terms of just the feel of the book, the way it held together. I was really determined to do something different with the genre while still paying homage to the genre, which is kind of
Right.
this whole circular thing that it wasn't balanced out properly. And it just hit me as I was like, kind of thinking through my agent's notes, and I was like, I think I know what it needs, and I think I have to start again. And I knew that it needed Frances's voice, and I knew we needed her voice in 1965 when she got
Right.
around when this fortune was starting to percolate in her mind. Because I was like, really, for someone to be this fixated on their own murder, they have to go through a whole lot, and there needs to be a lot of character development, and we should just see that. And as soon as I started adding Frances's voice on the page, everything clicked together. And I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't insert it into my old draft. I started a fresh 95,000
From the
words and I wrote
beginning.
it from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, I'm not sure if people who don't write novels understand how many iterations a story needs to go through. And sometimes you get lucky. And I
Mm,
really do think that sometimes you get lucky and you just nail it that first time and you have to insert things. And a lot
mhm.
of times you have to go back and rewrite. But Frances, really brought this significant emotional depth to the story, changing, as you said, sort of blending the genre a little bit with the cozy mystery, adding some of that emotional heft to the story. So, I mean, I sort of can't imagine it without her. Um,
I, yeah,
right?
I wouldn't be able to imagine it without her. So much so that in the second book, in future books, that format remains the same. I was like, you know
Hmm.
what, we have multiple. If she was someone who started writing a diary that year, she wouldn't have stopped. She would have many books, like multiple diaries of like these are the things that she's experiencing as she's going along. So I set myself up, with this whole, interlocking voices and interlocking mysteries, in that each subsequent book, I'm going to try to continue this,
The same.
this whole thing. But it's definitely not the easiest puzzle I've set for
No.
myself.
Well, it
Um,
is. I think, the dual timeline is tricky. It's nice in one way because you are having the opportunity to jump in and out of those characters' heads and those point of views and those timelines, but then you're also having to jump in and out of those character views and the timelines. And so it requires a different sort of balance to make those pieces feel seamless, which you
mhm.
did. But that comes with a lot of work.
That
I
took a
know that,
lot,
yeah.
yeah, that took a lot of shaping and balancing to balance their voices out. I think because I tend to get attached to whoever's voice I'm writing in. And then
Mm,
when I switch to one of the other voices, I have to kind of remind myself of what the juicy bits and what the exciting bits or what the emotional bits or questions we're asking are. And then as soon as I feel like I'm finding my feet in that voice, I switch over POVs. But I can't write them separately. I have to write them as they would fit on the, in
right.
the book because I want to feel that switching back and forth almost as if I'm the reader at the same time as I'm the writer.
Right.
It doesn't come
So,
out balanced in the first go ever.
yeah. No, I mean, I think that you also have to get to know your characters better, and you can't do that until you get them down on the page and give them space to grow and develop. But um, yeah, now I just wanted to ask a little bit about the fortune teller questions. Do you believe in fortune tellers? And, do you believe in this fate? And maybe you can tell people a little bit about what this fortune is that Francis gets. Or are you more of a free will thinker?
That's a good question. I love this question because I try to really dodge it, mostly because I don't really want to plant my foot in either the yes or no camp because I don't really want the reader to come at the books
Mm,
feeling like there is a right or wrong answer to that because the openness of it is Francis's fate. Like, is Peony Lane actually the fortune teller's? Peony Lane is the name of our fortune teller. Um, is she actually able to see the future, or is
yeah.
Francis taking things around her and fitting them, reverse engineering because she has the sort of mindset that she has? And I don't really want there to be a clear answer either way. I like that the reader could kind of go, no, I definitely think that this is Peony Lane, who has this uncanny ability to see the future, or
Hmm.
no, this is clearly Francis's paranoia engineering this into this thing. Um, I myself, though, I am weirdly superstitious in like ridiculous ways. And enough so that
Please
like
share. Please share one way that you are
yeah, one thing that
ridiculously
one of
superstitious
my weird
for the
superstitions.
readers.
So obviously Francis's mindset is something that did initially come from my own neuroses. And I really like I have all these little notebooks and I really like to handwrite out my to-do lists. I write like, I don't handwrite my books.
Mhm.
I work in Scrivener. Like I like all of the very whizzy bells
Cute.
and whistles. Yeah. It's like Scrivener,
Yeah,
when you have
it's
two
amazing.
POVs, it's a game changer and you can drag like I love it.
Just for
Um,
everybody, in case you're wondering, Scrivener is a software tool that you can use that really allows you to almost have like a bulletin board approach to your novel. And so you can move chapters around and characters, and you can throw in extra details, especially if you're doing a lot of research, like you can have that all there. It's an amazing tool. Takes a
yeah.
little bit of a learning curve, but it's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they've got really good helpful videos on there as well because I'm really not
yeah,
great at that. So it took me a lot of like watching the videos to be like, oh, that's how you do that. And
right.
I wrote this book. I wrote How to Solve in like pages on Mac and had a pile of post-it notes that was just, and it was a mess. Um, and so anyway, I'm getting off track because
Yeah.
I do like to handwrite my daily like word counts of what I hit because I set myself daily targets. And
Mm.
I like to handwrite out my to-do lists. And to-do lists for me are just a mixture of everything at once. And I always like to have, I feel like it's bad luck to complete a to-do list. I always want items on my to-do list because I feel
Mm.
like I never want to feel like I have nothing left to accomplish.
So
I feel like there's always things I need. I have unfinished business, you
do
know?
you have a running, like, is it just like you have a notebook and you just keep making this ongoing perpetual to-do list that just
Mhm.
stretches through
Yeah.
all of time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I
Oh,
have I do sort of chunk it up sometimes where I'm like we have to, start fresh and like take a few of the unfinished items from the previous, pages, sift it
yeah.
through and re-add them to the but yeah, it's my funny little like, so it's little things like that. Because I feel like it's kind of a metaphor for life. I feel like you always should. I don't get overwhelmed by going, gosh, I have a lot of things I need to do. I'm kind of like, well, that's great that I have things to do because it
Yeah.
means that like I have life to live,
That's right. Yeah, I
I don't
agree. It's
want
a
to
really
feel
good way to
done.
look at it.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
don't
good
want
way to look at it.
to,
But
it's
I do feel like there's a natural question now about your process
okay.
and I'm
Yeah.
Canadian, in case anyone just was wondering why I say process and not process. Um, because are you a pantser or a plotter? And perhaps I will define those for people so that everyone understands what that is. A plantser is somebody who, well, a pantser. I say plantser because I'm a plantser, which is a potter. Oh my gosh. Listen to me trying to clarify this and complicating it. I'm a combination between a pantser and a plotter, which I call a plantser. So a plotter is someone who has the plot completely laid out. You have lots of probably spreadsheets and notes and other things, and you know where you're going from beginning to end. A pantser is someone who writes by the seat of their pants and just lets the rhythm of the book move them. So I'm a plantser. I've just messed it all up, but that's somewhere in the middle. So what about you? What are
Yeah.
you?
So it is a tongue twister, those like
Ah,
plotter, pantser. I'm gonna mess them all up now too.
I
Um,
know. Sorry.
Oh, I'll just refer to it as the outline.
The
There is
outline.
I will loosely outline every book. I want to know who my murderers are going to be. I want to know why. I want to know
Mm,
generally my big like beats that I want to hit. So, in most books on writing, they'll give you certain, 3-act plot structure, certain plot beats.
yeah.
I don't like to write them out as in this is the beat we should be feeling this right now. This should be happening now. I like to kind of get that rhythm instinctively, because I find that sometimes when I try to force myself into a really rigid structure, and probably I imagine you'd feel the same way because ultimately I am a combination of
Mhm.
both of these, writing by the seat of my pants and plotting things out. I like to plot things out because there are certain ideas that I have that I don't want to lose. Often by the time I get to those ideas, I don't want them anymore.
Yeah.
Because the evolution of the book has taken me to a place where I'm like, no, we need this other thing now, or we need this thing I just thought of. Um, and this can mean really big changes sometimes to the outline. So ultimately, like, yeah, I like to have a sketch of an outline and then often throw a lot of it away as I'm going. One of the things I like to say is that like I am a different person at 100 words than I am at 1,000 words, than I am at 10,000 words, at
Right.
50,000 words. I'm a different person. Like my characters are different. Everything we all, like I feel like just this rolling with the book itself. And that's why I like the pantser kind of description because I mean in a lot of ways I think it's just you evolve as your characters evolve because it's this creative journey that you're on.
Mhm.
And trying to force yourself to stick to something that you wrote before you even put one word down, is often what, I think has in the past for me when I was early on in my writing publishing journey has created a lot of gridlock and a lot of,
Mm.
I've lost the word for when you can't write.
Writer's block?
Yes. I can't believe I just forgot the term for when you can't write.
It's
Writer's
because
block.
you want to keep it out of your space. You're trying to
Yes,
like
I
keep it
know.
away
Yes.
from your space. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because
Writer's
of
block.
writer's block. What even is that? I don't even, but it
Who
is
has that? Right? Yeah.
definitely not me. Yeah, so I think that I thought that like this worry that I was supposed to write in one specific way, that there was a correct way to be doing it,
Mm. Hmm.
did cause me a lot of issues early on when I was trying to find the manuscript that was going to help get me my agent, the manuscript that was gonna,
Right.
and then, from then on, yeah. So, and also I think that sometimes when I feel my story start to flag and I feel myself getting less interested in it, I like to shake it up just because I think, well, if I surprise myself, then my reader's going to be surprised. Uh,
Yeah.
there are twists that I have in my books that I'm like, yep, that just appeared. Like that was just,
Yeah.
I wanted to shake it up. I like to write myself into corners sometimes, kind of just being like, hey, get yourself out of
You're
this.
like the perfect mystery writer. This is exactly it. You write yourself into corners, so you have to find the puzzle to get you out. It's like you were made to
Exactly.
do this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because this is the thing is I feel like if I write myself into a corner, my readers aren't going to see. They're because I want that sense of
You're
how
sneaking up on yourself. This is
yes,
brilliant,
yes.
Kristen. You're just,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that it is one of those things though that like the further down my publication journey I get, now that I have readers of my books, the attitude that I have towards it becomes scarier and scarier. So the first joyful experimentation of the drafts that I had with How to Solve, I don't have that sense of free for all in my newer books that I'm writing in the series because I know I have in my head now, deadlines and an audience, and
Yeah.
there are readers who are, there's expectations. There's, it's not just me and my
Yeah.
laptop anymore. So there is a sense of like, I mean, maybe in some ways it amps up the adrenaline rush of doing that because I feel like, oh no, because I have editors now. I'm like, what if they hate this? But oftentimes, luckily, I've got a great relationship. I've got great editors, so I'm kind of like, what? Let's just try it. They will
Yeah,
tell me,
you've got people in your corner. And I do think
yeah,
that when you get some experience with the process of writing the book and going through everything from, that first manuscript that you get drafted all the way through and beyond publication, like you learn a lot about what you need to do. And that can give you some space to be creative as well, because some of those question marks around, I don't really understand what it means to do first pass pages or what it means to, have a copy edit. What does that look like? When you've had that experience, then you can, go, okay, I know what that looks like. I know how I have to approach my writing. It's okay if I get myself into a corner, I can get out. There's some confidence I think that can come. So,
for sure. And I think also like when you've never done something before, some of these things you don't know how much you should freak out over them, Like I'm
yeah.
the nerdy kid with the, like I was like, "Hey, I'm going to get all the degrees you can possibly get just because I don't know what else to do." My high school job was, I lived in Barnes and Noble. Like I loved it. So I am the person who, if I get, past pages or copy edit or whatever, I'm kind of like, what level of fastidiousness am I needing to use towards this? Well, how should I focus my energy? Because
Hmm.
I have one speed, and that is kind of like I will do my absolute utmost. And sometimes when you're juggling a lot of stuff, as a professional writer, things become different once you're published. You're
Yes.
chatting to people, you're trying to get people to notice your book. You're reading other people's books and getting really excited to send out a blurb for something, or and there's a lot of
Yeah.
things being spun. So sometimes you kind of go, okay, we can calm down about this. This is just copy edits. We can read through it. It's fine. We address things.
Yep. Task. Put it
Yeah,
on your to-do list, which is
I
never ending.
know.
Now, but I want to just switch us over to some reader questions because I'm noticing the time, and I think we could probably talk all night long. But I want to make sure that the questions that got sent in, I'll address as many of them as I can. We'll give it a go, right?
Yes. Yes.
So one of the first questions here, and I think it's just a little bit related to what you were talking about in terms of the, writing schedule and what that looks like. But one of the questions was like, what does your writing schedule typically look like? So what's sort of a day in the life of Kristen when she's in writer mode?
Hmm. I like this because I've never been asked this. I mean, people ask me like what my process is like, but never like
Yeah.
what what does the practical day look like? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And also, so because I'm, a mom as well, so I'm juggling two kids. So, I generally I get up and I do mom stuff. I have to get them out the door, get them ready for school. And then when I have a quiet house, when everybody is off, I generally exercise first thing because I need that like movement to kind of I like that endorphin boost like
Mm,
first thing. And also like sitting hunched over a computer all day, I get back problems.
yeah.
So I do a bit of exercise, and then depending on where I'm at in a book, so if I am drafting, so my writing days, I set myself a goal of usually 2,000 or 3,000 words a day. I am a fast drafter, and that is not normal. So for writers out there that are like, oh my God, I don't write 2,000 or 3,000 words a day, that's a very quick speed.
Yep.
And it's because if I'm writing a first draft, I have to write quickly or I won't get through an entire manuscript. Like I have
Yeah.
I'm one of these people that I have to sometimes even set a timer and do like writing sprints where if I'm really dragging my feet and I do not want to get the words down, I sometimes I have like a critique partner or a writer friend and we text each other and we say, "Hey, I'm gonna do a sprint. So let's set our timer for 30 minutes. Let's see if we can get, you know, 300 words in." I always set my targets really low when I'm doing a sprint because then I'm always winning. So in 15 minutes, if I can write like 150 words, I'll be like, great, I wrote 300,
Yeah.
you know. So
That's great.
yeah, so I generally am one of these people who is, when I'm drafting, head down, trying to hit a word count goal. And if I hit that word count goal and I still feel like I have more to say, I will let myself exceed it. There are times when I've written 7 or 8,000 words in one day. Those days
Hmm.
will make me absolutely just like Homer Simpson symbol monkey brain,
Yeah.
I will be just static after that. And I generally, if I push myself that far, I will let myself take a day off the next day.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm the same. If I write that much in a day, I almost need, it's like I need to wait for the creativity to build back up again.
there's
It
like
really,
yeah, it's like a hangover. It's like a writing
a
hangover,
little bit,
hangover.
because
So
that's a lot. That is a lot of words in a
it's a
day.
lot of words, and that like, is it's not typical. And also I've worked up to this as well. So like
Mhm.
the number of drafts that I've had that I've written before getting my age, I think I got my agent on my fourth completed book, and then with my agent, who I've been with for I think 5 or so years. I have a children's trilogy that like a middle grade trilogy, but also when I was kind of trying to find my feet with publishing, I wrote, I think, two additional manuscripts that we were like, no, actually, this isn't the time for this book right now. We're not going to send this one out. So in that process, my daily word count got like up and up. Like
Yeah.
was able to, I got more like seasoned, I think. But there's
Yeah,
nothing,
it's a muscle. It's like you if you
yeah,
work it, then
flex
it
it.
does
Yeah.
get easier
Yeah.
to build on it and to spend
Mhm.
more time doing it, right?
That being said,
Um,
there are some people who are always going to be like the daily word count isn't going to be very high, and there's no right way. So,
this is why writing advice is so tricky because
yeah.
what works for someone is not going to work for someone else. I have learned, and it
Yeah.
really does depend on what motivates you and how you can find the way. Like you've got to get your butt in your seat and get the words down, but that looks different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Um, so how long did it take you to finish the book?
Hmm. Well, because I wrote this book several
Wait,
times, yeah,
yes, of course. So should we look at it like when you rewrote it with
yeah, my
Francis's
rewrite. My
help?
rewrite, um, my rewrite happened probably the fastest that at the time, the fastest I had ever written a
Mm,
draft, because I just felt this click of everything. Yes, I know what I want to do. And I got so excited about Francis's voice as well, and just getting the mystery. The mystery changed. There's
mm.
a big conclusion in the, and I don't want to give anybody
Yeah, no
spoilers.
spoilers.
But there was a big reveal that completely changed
Oh, interesting.
from the first draft to the second. I was like, I have to make a huge another reason I started again, you know, come from scratch. I think that probably took me 3 months. I wrote that in about 3 months. Um, and
Fast.
it it also needed and then that's before all of the so I always say I'm a fast drafter, I'm a heavy editor. So
Hmm.
I will get a draft out really, really, 3 months is a very fast time for a draft. But granted,
Hmm.
I had already written this book a full time already before
Right.
that. So I think that contributed to the speed of it as well, because I think I really knew the characters by that point. And the characters didn't change. It's just that we had the addition of Frances and her timeline. But with the editing process, it's a deep dive, and it's often it takes me a lot longer. It's a lot more like I will pull entire plot threads out. I tend to, in my
Mhm.
first drafts, just add whatever I want, and I overstuff my plots, and then I have to pull stuff out. And usually that will be the eyes of critique partners, my agent, and now my editing team.
And your editors.
Me
Yeah.
kind of, and I do that on purpose, where I'm like, I am going to, because it's like this sense of when you create something, you have a harder sense of knowing which things quality wise might be better than others, because there's this almost like euphoric high of like, I made a
Hmm.
thing. And it feels very shiny and great. And for me, I always have that at the end of every book, and then it comes crashing down, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
a little
I
bit
know.
later. Yeah. And so yeah,
Part
so
of
that
it.
time,
It's
yeah.
all part of it.
Yeah. So my fast drafting, but long edits.
Long edits. And now we're not supposed to pick favorites. You were talking about your characters just a few moments ago, but one of the questions was, who is your favorite character that you have created in your book and why, if you can pick one?
Ooh. Okay, so
Tough questions these
it's a
readers are giving you, I'm telling
it
you.
is, yeah, it is a really tough question, and I'm going to answer it but dodge it at the same time, in that I'm going to rule out Annie and Frances. I'm not going to
Okay.
choose between Annie and Frances. I'm going to choose between the secondary characters, all of our kind of like minor characters who are also players in their own way. And I'm in book one, and there's a in book one I say Archie Foyle.
Okay.
And we don't see, well, it changes book to book, but I will say at the moment Archie Foyle, because probably because I've just come off book two, and we get to know a lot more about who Archie is and what his whole story is in book two.
Okay, that's exciting. That's
Uh,
exciting. Now, I mean, since you've brought it up, because I
mhm.
usually save this for the end, what's next for you, Kristen? What can we expect next? But I think you've sort of let us in. It's not a secret that we
Oh,
are going back to Castle Knoll. And
yeah.
so what is what's coming with that book.
Yeah, so book two, which is already out in the UK, but you only have a couple of weeks in the US and Canada for that release. It comes out on I believe, the 27th, 26th, 27th, of this month. And it's called How to
Great.
Save Your Own Fate, and it deals with the murder of the fortune teller Peony Lane, the woman who first told Frances her fortune in 1965, is murdered in the modern timeline as an old woman, and is murdered in
Mhm.
the solarium in Gravestown Hall while Annie and her best friend Jenny are there, like having tea and scones. So it doesn't look great for Annie.
Lovely.
It doesn't look great for Annie.
Doesn't
There is a
Poor
dead
Annie.
seller in her house. And
Yeah.
we have Frances in the 1965, 19, I think it's like 1966, 67 by then, looking into some of the secrets of the Gravesdown family
Mm.
in the 1960s timeline. And, as with book one, we have some interesting interweaving. Things are related in unexpected ways. And Annie gets to work a bit more with Detective Crane, and that he's another favorite, I would
Okay.
say. Like, it's really hard to choose favorite characters,
See, it's
actually.
very hard to pick, isn't it? And you have
Really
a number
hard.
of characters in your
Yeah,
story,
there's a
so it
lot of
is
characters.
there's
There's a lot,
a lot of people to
yeah,
choose from.
there's a lot
So
of
that
people.
we'll give you that one. That's okay. I won't push you too hard on that one. Do you have a favorite part of the book? Like, do you have a favorite scene or, um,
I
like,
do.
yeah,
Yeah.
tell us, please.
Well, it's a massive spoiler, but I can kind of dance around it
Uh-oh.
for people who've read the book. I can dance around it. But it's right around the middle of the book. So in the very beginning of the book, Annie is cleaning out her mom's basement, and she is pulling out suitcases and trunks because her mom wants to make it into an art studio, and her mom's instructions are just send all of this junk back to Great Aunt Frances. So Annie doesn't even look in any of these suitcases, and she sends them all to Great Aunt Frances without, just hires someone to take them away. And in the middle of the book, we learn a little bit more about those suitcases, and that was my favorite scene to write.
Okay.
Is when Annie sees the suitcases that she had cleaned out from the basement.
Okay. So if you haven't read it, now you have another little nugget to get in there and to read the book. But
Yeah.
for everyone who has read it, then they will know what you're talking about.
Yes,
So that's great to know.
hopefully it was a non-spoilery kind of.
A non-spoilery spoiler of
Yes,
sorts.
yes.
Yeah. Another question here is, how do you get out of writer's block, the thing that you couldn't remember and did not want to
I
invoke
know.
even in this conversation? But
My my
if you
brain blocked writer's block.
yes,
Just as
but
a
if you do
um
ever find yourself in a place where you're having a difficult time, and you did say you set some writing sprints, so that's one
yeah,
way to do it. But is there anything
yeah.
else that you do to get out of that?
Yeah, so this is something that happens to me quite a lot. And I do mostly, I think one of the biggest pieces like of writing advice that I could give anybody who's an aspiring writer is to know your own brain as best you can, and to know how you personally work best. Like, everybody's like, anything, like, think of like, and not even how you write best, but just like how you function best. Like,
Mm.
even I was thinking of, all the previous jobs I've had, and, things that I struggled with when I was at, an office desk, and things that I struggled with, when I was doing my PhD. And the tools that I used in those environments also work for writer's block. So the first is just to figure out if there is a why that is easy to find. Why am I stalling right now? And that you'll hear that from a lot of writers, which is, is your outline, are you trying to force yourself into a part of an outline that or you're
Yeah.
actually you instinctively know isn't right? Do you not know your characters well enough? So Oftentimes I will be trying to have something go on in a scene, and the scene, I just don't want to write it and I don't want to look at it. And it's because there's more work to be done. And the writing of the scene, I'm not ready yet mentally to do that because I don't
Mhm.
know enough about. There are several scenes with Francis and Ford in How to Solve Your Own Murder, because um, I was thinking about when you said, what's your favorite scene? There was actually several scenes where it was just Francis and Ford. And that created such terrible writer's block for me. And I chatted
Mm.
to another writer's friend. This is another thing I tend to do, is if you have other friends who are writers or friends who just like to listen to you, to discuss like your writing process with you, talk it out. And
Mm.
sometimes you can find out what was wrong. And for me, a critique partner was like, well, what is it about Ford? Like, and she was asking me questions about Ford. And I was like, I don't know him well enough. He was this
Mm.
character who emerged from the shadows. I created a backstory for him, and I thought that's enough backstory. And it turns out it wasn't. And as soon as I gave him more depth and I'll do that with writing exercises as well sometimes, where I almost create like different scenarios where I would put him in and kind of think about how he would react and why. I could rewrite the
Yeah.
scenes and I knew just what I wanted to say. So yeah, a real variety of things. I also have a writing journal that I type all of my frustrations into. It's a really good way to vent. And
Mm.
I would say, I forgot to say about that on my daily writing. I often start by opening up, and it's a digital file on my computer. It's just a big long stream by date, and it gets me typing in the morning. It gets me dumping out all the noise that I have in my brain, and any of the problems that I foresee that I'm stuck on. I kind of talk to myself about them, because sometimes my friends and family and writer friends are just tired of hearing about my books, because it can become all consuming. And
Yeah.
it's something that I started during my PhD, because there's only so much you can talk about research and people's eyes glaze over. But
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes you really do need to kind of run it through. So I talk it through with myself, and that will
Yeah.
often crack open problems and give me a momentum again. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Now, were any of the characters inspired by people in your life, in your personal life? And I want to add on to that about the setting, because I believe that Castle Knoll is a fictional place, right? You made it up for this story, but
It's based on a real place though. Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
that is, and are there any people, any of these characters, are they based on, or are
So
you unable to commit to that answer?
no, I don't base characters off of real people generally, because I like the kind of outlandish flair for drama that exists in fictional people. Like, I like
Hmm.
nuggets of things that might be relatable to all of us as people, but I want that like extra punch of interest, and people that will make decisions that we would never make, In murder mysteries, you need people who are going to make bad decisions, or are going to
Yeah.
make confusing decisions or impulsive decisions. And there are a lot of times things that people would just realistically probably never do. I will say that there is a part of Annie that is based off of me, which is that I faint at the sight of blood. I am
Do
terrible.
you? Oh
Yes,
dear.
I'm awful with it. I can't even, I struggle to even get my nails done, because I'm like, no, don't push on my cuticles. It makes me like really woozy. I can't
And
handle
you
it.
have children, so that complicates that because they're,
Yes, it does. It does.
yeah.
I've been able to kind of run through like with adrenaline to
Mm.
kind of help, with a scraped knee, and kind of like I can keep myself conscious, but I am generally like really quite bad with it.
Did
So
it bother you writing some of those scenes? Because there is some,
no,
was it hard writing it?
no, and also on crime shows, it doesn't bother me. That kind of like
It's just
reading
real
about
life.
just real life, yeah.
Mm.
And also often I can handle it better with other people than I can with myself. So it's worse
Right.
like I have to go to a doctor or hospital and get blood drawn or whatever. I'm really bad at. But like I think with if somebody else is injured, I'm a bit more like better at dealing with it than myself. But yeah,
Okay.
Castle Knoll is based on the village of Corfe Castle, which is in Dorset, which was the village that my husband, who's English, was uh
Mm.
raised in. And a lot of it is very, very similar. It's a beautiful town. There's a steam train. There's a hill with a
Oh,
Norman
nice. So
castle.
charming. Yeah.
Yeah, thatched roofs and sheep off the side of the road, and
Wow.
it's really an idyllic place. Highly recommend if anybody is taking a trip to the UK
What is
to
it called again? Just so
called
everyone can.
Corfe. It's called Corfe Castle. And I often,
Castle.
when I'm down there visiting family, I do post on my Instagram pictures and things sometimes of that village. It's really, really nice, and it's also down by the coast, so it's a nice kind of part of the country.
Sounds lovely. I'll have to put that one on my list.
Yeah.
I think that I'm going to try to get two more questions in here.
Yeah.
We'll just try to wrap it up. But again, we could talk all day long. I
I
have
know.
to
I'm
admit.
sorry.
Uh,
I should
no,
answer
this is
them
great.
shorter.
No, this has been fantastic. But how do you decide if an idea is good enough to be turned into a novel?
Oh, this is a great question, and no one's ever asked me this. Um, I I often have to do the thing where I let them sit. So I have idea files where if I get like something, it's this writers always talk about like the new shiny. There's new shiny things that were like, hey, this could be the one. And I'm used to now this bubble of excitement where I think it is the greatest thing, and I think it is going to be the book that's going to be the one that goes,
So easy to write. Just
yes, this is going to
flows.
be
Yeah.
just the perfect book. And oftentimes, like, there's nothing wrong with that, like, overinflated sense of how good the idea is because it can push you through the difficult process of the actual hashing out of the novel. But
Mhm.
at the same time, when it's like, which idea do I want to chase? Because I am an idea chaser, I am an idea person. There's always ideas around. I dump them in a file and I dump them in whatever, if I have fragments of dialogue or if I have fragments of character description, if the idea is rooted in a particular place, if there's a concept behind it. And I put it
Mm.
in this sort of idea file. And if I can't stop thinking about it, I let myself go back and work on it as long as I'm not, needing to meet a different deadline. But oftentimes I let myself I let it sit and I work on another thing. I read a book, I do something else, and then I come back and I look at it again and I think, okay, how do I feel about this? And oftentimes the shine of it will dim and I will see it
Mm.
in a more realistic way. Sometimes I will be able to go, okay, no, wait. This would be better if I swap this and this goes in there. And I have multiple documents that are these different idea files. And
Mm.
often one of them, the feasibility of it, just kind of looking at what makes a book, will just surface above all the others. There will be others where I'm like, oh, I don't know how I can actually pull that off. Or, oh, I think
Yeah.
maybe this hasn't really been done, or this has been done too many times, this would just be me adding to the noise. This would be, or sometimes it's like this is me taking something that, hey, yeah, maybe there is a lot of this already, like with murder mystery, with cozy, with like this knives out, only murders in the building, like they was
Hmm.
these stories are everywhere, but I was like, no, I think I have my own spin, and I think that's exciting. And so it's generally
Hmm.
just time and kind of looking at what makes a book and deciding, instinctively, yes, this is the book I would want to read, so this is the book I'm going to write.
Right. And knowing that you have, most books are like 85,000, 90,000 words or so. And so it's a long time to spend with a story. And
Yes.
knowing that you are excited enough to live with that story for the amount of time you need to.
Yeah.
Um, so what are you reading recently and what authors inspire you?
So currently, I am reading a book called Spells for Forgetting, which is by
Hmm.
over here somewhere, Adrian Young. I actually even have it right
Yep.
here. Um, I wanted something atmospheric and slightly mysterious, slightly almost whimsical, and I'm really enjoying it so far. And I thought, I wanted
Right.
something, yeah, almost like cozy autumn vibe, and it's Pacific Northwest set, and I miss the Pacific Northwest a lot. I haven't been back in a number of years, so I'm overdue for a trip back. And authors who inspire me. I am constantly inspired by, every book I read. I'm like, oh, this person's doing this really great. Um, I read outside of my genre a lot, because I get intimidated reading crime while writing crime because I'm like, oh
Mm,
my goodness, this person's doing this so much better. Books that so I read a lot of fantasy and science fiction when I'm drafting because it just feels like a
okay.
relax for my brain because I'm not trying to do what it is that I'm reading on the page. So, and I love things that are that great mix of almost like lyrical fiction and like a bit of mystery and a bit of magic. So my auto buy authors are authors like, where whatever they write, I will be like, sign me up. Are authors like Alex E. Harrow, who wrote
Hmm.
10,000 Doors of January. And I think I saw some of the questions in advance, and there was a what book do you wish you wrote? And I remember reading
Yeah.
1,000 Doors of January and being like, this is a fantastic, I love it. And I think the reason I wish that I wrote it is because I know that I couldn't write a book like that because she writes in a very different, like it's just she's doing
Yeah.
something, it's like a magic trick. I'm like, how are you doing this? This is
I mean,
wonderful.
but people will say that about your book as well. It's author's voice. It's just
I love
like,
that. Yeah. There's something about, yeah. So I will buy
yeah.
any of hers. I love books by Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
Oh, yeah.
I love the really weird science fiction as well. I love
Mm,
China Mieville. But for crime, I really, I like Tana French, and I really, oh,
mhm.
there was someone else that, Aaron Kelly. I remember years ago devouring a book called The Poison Tree, and she
Oh, I
writes.
haven't read that one. I'll have to put that
Yeah,
on my
it's
list.
just it's another kind of flashbacks to the past that interweaves with a a crime from the past and people in the present that there's things that are unresolved. I absolutely loved it. It like those books where you're hooked and you have to
Yeah.
see what
Cannot put it down. You have to keep
it down.
going.
That was one of those for me. Yeah. And yeah, I could go on and on about authors that and the thing of like what authors inspire me. I know I'm gonna finish this chat and then go, oh, I didn't say that person or that person.
I
Um,
know. You can
yeah.
always put them on social media and everyone can go and check
Yeah.
out
I
your
definitely, I
posts.
definitely think I should do some more like author like kind of stacks of books. Like here's what I'm
Yeah.
reading
What
now,
you're
and
loving or who's inspiring
yeah.
you with what you're writing right now. Yeah. So maybe we can all expect to see some of that and everyone can go looking for that, right? Uh,
Yes, I am the slowest reader as well. Like I write really quickly, but I read very slowly. So I think sometimes as well, I just see people with these stacks of books that they've been reading, and I'm like, how do you read so fast? I can't listen to
yeah.
audiobooks either, not because I don't, it's just because my brain doesn't,
I'm the same. I do struggle. It's much better for me if I'm reading and the visual learning, but
I struggle with
every,
focusing. Yeah, I suddenly realized
yeah.
that like 2 minutes have gone by and I've like gotten distracted by like a butterfly out of the window or something. And I think it's just that I'm very visual, and I know I wish
Yeah.
I had that I could plug in with the audio because it is a very specific type of brain. I think that does well with that, and you can get through so
Hmm.
many books that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Just walking and putting a book in your ear. Well, no matter how you do it, reading is just such a gift. And your book is such a gift. Like I said, I just loved it. And I know that for anyone who hasn't read it yet, please go and get it and do yourself a favor. It is warm and cozy, but like I said, it also has all this emotional depth to it. Now that you've heard all about it and learned more
and
about Kristen.
And also check out Karma's books because you guys, she's got a great catalog of books. Like, and also with the recipe for a perfect wife, I absolutely love with like the 1950s and the modern, like
Yeah.
this interweaving of lives from,
Yeah.
distance of decades. If you like how to solve, definitely, guys, check out a recipe for a perfect wife.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining us today, for putting your questions in advance. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of them. We couldn't get to all of them. We tried.
My
And
fault.
if you bought a ticket that included How to Solve Your Own Murder with a signed book plate, just so you know, that book will be delivered to you in 8 to 10 business days. And if you haven't done that yet, please know that you can always get a copy on barnesandnoble.com 24/7, or your local Barnes and Noble store will have stock for you. So please go out and buy the book. Thank you, Barnes and Noble. Thank you, Kristen. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you
Thank you
today.
so much, Karma. It's been wonderful chatting with you too. Thank you so much for doing this. And a huge thanks to Barnes& and Noble. And a huge thanks for, everybody who's going and picking up my book. And I hope you enjoy it.
They will. All right. Thanks.